All right, guys, we are rolling. Now, it took me a minute, but I wanted to get my thoughts as clear as possible for this one. It's important because today we're talking about book covers. Now, in the last video, I talked about reframing the way you think about marketing as a self-publishing author. And to sum it all up, stop selling your book. Nobody cares. I'm not talking about your effort, okay? Don't get all emotional. If you're just starting out or have no audience, it's just impossible for people to care about what you created. Not until they read your book, not until they fall in love with the characters, build relationships with them in their mind, and then they can begin to feel the experiences those characters are going through, not just follow along. Until you've given the shopping reader that experience, you don't have a book to sell. So instead, sell an emotional experience they've already had. More specifically, you're going to sell the promise that you'll make them feel something similar. Remember, this is marketing and sales you're in now. You're having a conversation, just like we're having a conversation right now. So you must show and provide value. That's if you plan on exchanging your novel for their time and money. And one of those you can't refund. Got it? All right, so we're talking book covers, but this conversation is not going to go how you think it will. So I need you to saddle up, put the thinking cap on, because we're diving deep. But if you don't want to be part of the vast majority of authors with bargain bin books, you need to stay with me. Why? Because that marketing conversation I spoke of, it has steps, stages, and each stage has some very unique things happening, and you have some very specific needs to meet in order to keep the shopper talking, keep them in your pipeline. So we're going to dig into that. Please pay attention. This is the tipping point between having written a book and being a known author. Okay, so I know you guys are just itching for some, okay. How to create a book cover though, man? How do I do that, right? You want that tutorial magic. Don't lie to me. I can see it all over your face. It's fine, but let's compromise, okay? Instead of giving you some half-assed, no, back off. I'm keeping my money, swear jar. Keep my money. Some half-assed paint-by-numbers instructional that shows you what to do instead of how to think. How's about I take a really well-executed example and show you the thought process behind it? Just get all up in them nooks and crannies and break it down. That way you can actually see what we've been talking about in action, and you don't just take my word for it, You can apply this thinking to your own novels, which are wholly unique from each other. Cool. Let's take a look at Knives Out. Look at this. Look at it. Y'all, this is some beautiful craftsmanship right here. And by the way, if you can't tell, it's not a book cover. Oh no, we're looking at a movie poster. And this is why. See, as authors, even marketers who cater to authors, you think like authors, trying to convert the imagery formed in our minds, images that are completely different for each reader, by the way, into imagery for our covers and marketing. But then, even worse, you try to pour that imagery back into a literary mold, right? Make it feel like a book cover. Which looks like what, by the way? What is a book cover? Why? Why do we do that? They're not representations of our books, our covers. That's not what they're intended to do. Book covers are tools. They have one purpose: engage specific emotions, make them pick up the book. That's it. So I want you to look at this poster because the movie industry tells stories just like we do. But their universe is visual storytelling, triggering emotions through visuals. And movie posters are highly successful at this, unlike book covers, which is funny because if you take away a few elements, they're the same thing, same purpose, same tool. Think about it. Movie posters sell stories a lot, and at roughly the same price point, by the way. Ever been to a crowded theater and seen people get hype standing in front of a coming soon poster? Yeah, that's because they sell the experience, the emotions you're going to feel, not the story. So, Knives Out. This poster is amazing. Why? Because it's a whodunit murder mystery. I love those. I love me a whodunit, right? Was it the maid? Was it the butler? Was it Alf? Some of y'all are old enough to know who Alf is. But look what it's doing. Look at the atmosphere. Right off the bat, most of you would create a dark, ominous cover for a murder mystery, right? But look at the lushness of the color palette, the title, the clothing, and scenery. It's bright, bold even. And that boldness, it bleeds into other areas. The title is huge. It wants you to know there's some junk going down. And the characters, their expressions are fearless as they stare out at you boldly, challenging you. But take a second and think about that. The way they stand together. A wall you, the viewer, can't penetrate. A wall of accusation. Look at their expressions. For all the brightness of their surroundings, there is no warmth in their eyes. And so the bright color palette loses warmth altogether. The rich people's surroundings lose their welcome. It makes you uncomfortable. Something's wrong. Something you can't see. In so many ways, they're closing you off from their world, banding together against you. Why? Again, I'm challenging you to think, why would they look out at you accusingly? You're not a character, are you? Well, yeah. Yes, you are. And no. See, the key to a whodunit is not knowing who done it. I couldn't get away from that. But you got to work, right? As you work through your way through the story, you begin to identify, root for one or more of these characters, knowing, feeling all the while like the killer could be your dude or dudette. It's in the back of our minds. There's a guilt associated with that thought. Down deep, we can say to ourselves, dang, how can I root for anyone? I could totally be wrong. And what does that say about me if I don't see it coming, if I can relate to a killer? As the viewer, we're the only ones given every clue needed to pick out the villain, hiding in plain sight. It all gets revealed at the end, and we see all the obvious yet subtle hiding spots of those clues. And because of that knowledge we've had access to all along, knowledge we know we're going to be getting from the very beginning, because that's the fun of this genre. We feel a sense of separation from the characters throughout the story, because we could have saved them had we been smart enough, savvy enough, had we not been possibly rooting for their killer. That's what this poster is communicating. The core emotional thread. It's triggering for those of us who like a good mystery, the old feelings we've had with murder mysteries in the past. Through the bright, posh, luscious scenery and color palette bumping up against the accusatory wall, blocking us off from these people, we feel the emotional threads of isolation, subtle menace, and guilt, all without dark colors or menacing figures. Even the weapon of the killer is so obviously large that it's lost in subtlety. It hits every emotional chord needed for true fans and even casual viewers. This, guys, is the way you construct a book cover and make it a communication tool. Not a book-related communication tool, just a tool. Imagine two islands. On one, it's you and your book, stranded, alone, forgotten. And then on the other, your audience. Wait, not your audience. Wait, your fans, right? Go big or go home. Your fans are on the other island. But again, they don't know you're alive. They're never coming for you. But we've rewired your brain in that last video, okay? You're a survivor now. You've got tools and you have time. You're gonna build a bridge over that water. Now, you don't just plop a completed bridge into existence, right? You've got to build it a section at a time, and you start by securing the pillars that will carry the bridge's load. Guys, I want you to think of marketing your novel as a gated process. Now, what the hell does that even mean, right? Good question. Here's a good answer. Those pillars for your bridge, they're your gates. Before you move on to the next part of your bridge, you've got to finish the platform held up by the pillar, the gate you just planted. Otherwise, the bridge collapses underneath you. Does that make sense? All right, now, a cool benefit about gates. By working through each section completely, you can isolate what's not working without slogging back through every step, trying to remember every action you took from the beginning of your publishing journey to the end state where you're here, curled up in the shower, crying, wondering if you should give it all up. It cuts down on the guesswork. I'm saying you can find and fix the problems. Awesomeness. So the first gate for new self-publishing authors is attraction. You need that other island to know you exist. Why? Because if they leave their island before you get there, You're still alone and stranded. Yeah, you have a change of scenery, but you're still alone. Attraction. Let them know you exist. But more importantly, let them know you're not a killer or, just weird, like cereal with water weird. You don't want that either because they may just pretend like they don't see you. What I'm saying is attraction isn't looking good. It's not just looking good. You got to say the right things too. You feel me? Okay, fellas, you see that girl across the way. You got to get that hey right, right? It's got to be
Hey.
come on, y'all hear me. Otherwise, you sound like
Hey.
I love that movie. But when it comes to book covers, it's the same thing. Your covers aren't really for looks, and they sure as hell ain't for you. They're a type of language, visual language, and the ones that work speak. It's the first thing you get to say to a shopper. But just like saying hey to that woman, your introduction needs more than just the hello. It helps to know why she's there in the first place, right? What is she looking for? What do you need to say as an icebreaker? Because if all you've got is a smooth ass hey, dang it, a swear jar, man. Ugh. All right. If all you got is a smooth hey and a shiny suit with nothing else to contribute to that convo that interests her, you're over. And besides, for every smooth fool like me, there are 10, 20, 100 other guys, other covers saying smooth haze to her also. What reason are you giving her to pick your conversation over theirs? I'm saying, yes, the gurus out there are right. You need to be recognizable in your genre. A sci-fi book cover can't mimic a romance cover. But you don't want to be a carbon copy of other science fiction novels either, because your cover won't sound, and I mean that, yes, sound like you have anything to say that hasn't already been said. Remember, it's a promise of a similar experience. If they wanted it exactly the same, they'd go read that book again. I do. A lot of readers do. You have to ride that line between mimicry and originality, between familiar and alien. Too far to the left and you're a construction worker whistling as she passes by, you jerk. And too far to the right and she's wondering if you're going to make her watch you reenact the entire Moana movie as a one-man play, which, okay, honestly, that would be impressive, bro, and I would probably come, but you're not getting the date with her. So once you catch their eye, which is not attraction, by the way, once you catch their eye using tactics you can find all over Google and YouTube, tactics like bold fonts and good contrast and color use and clear composition and humanizing elements, those haze I'm not going to go over because they don't matter if you don't understand why they work, which is why I'm teaching you here. Once you've caught their eye, you got to attract them with personal interest, their interests. And what those interests are is, again, those emotions we've been speaking of. Your visual language must communicate and trigger emotions first. You can't do that by simply recreating a scene out of your book. They haven't read it. They have no connection to it if it's a scene they haven't read before. And if they have read a scene like that before, you're boring and not worth the time. And even if you did manage to pull a cover-worthy scene, it still doesn't work if the imagery and expressions and compositions you use are flat, lifeless, generic, and don't thrum the emotional strings they expect it to thrum. Look, here's a quick down and dirty example, okay? Check out the difference between these two images. One, the first one, you get it. You understand what he's trying to say, sure. But the other one, you can feel. We've all been there in some way, and yet we have no idea what's making that man hurt. See, we're really good at reading emotional cues, the intangible stuff, the microscopic stuff. That's human nature. It's how we truly communicate. And it's not just faces or even photographs. Check this out. Look at these. All right. Now, these pictures are all artwork about a novel called Ender's Game. The first one is actually cover art for the book, like the old cover art, right? And I don't even know where the second one came from, but the last one is from the movie, which is, it's decent. But I want to share something with you, something personal, okay? And I'm going to tie it in. Growing up, my dad was military, and so we moved a lot. I was the quintessential new kid. I'm talking 90s Saturday afternoon special new kid, meaning I ate lunch in the library, I ate lunch in the bathroom stall, or I ate lunch in the locker room. until I hit high school, and then I glammed up, baby, yeah. But before that, New Kid City. So one day I'm sitting in the locker room, right, eating a Ninja Turtle pudding pie, which is like heaven. Judge me, fight me, I don't care. But I got my comic book open. And by the way, Google is like super scary because this is legit the cover of the actual comic I was reading that day. It's weird. But anyway, I'm grubbing. And then these boys walk in, 4 of them, smoking a cigarette, passing it around like a joint. They spot me, and they spot my Captain America werewolf comic, and they pretty much taste New Kid lameness, right? No, long story short, by the time they were done with me, my gut felt like a smashed bag of pork rinds. No face shots. You can't prove anything without evidence. And back then, you just didn't tell. So, yeah, I'm walking home. My gut's on fire. And I'm ending up at the comic store because that's nerd sanctuary. And I walk in. The cashier spots me. And his nerd sense gets to tingling. He already knows what's up. So we get to talking. I tell him what happened. And he digs in his backpack. And he throws me a book. He says, read it. Read the first few chapters. Yeah, it was Ender's Game. Now, check this out, y'all. What I've told you so far and what happens next is the key to getting from gate 1 attraction to gate 2. All right? Listen up. I read this book that night. Within the first few pages, I meet Andrew Ender Wiggin, genius 6-year-old kid. Cannot relate. He's in the gifted program at school. They're looking for the next military genius, and he's going to lead the Earth to battle against aliens. He's got a few haters, but they leave him alone. He's in the program. Still can't relate, right? My gut's on fire. But it's got aliens and a space battle, and it might be decent to fall asleep on. So, he's in the gifted program. Then he gets kicked out the program. No teachers are watching him anymore. The bullies show up. Okay, I'm listening. And when they get him alone, they start doing what bullies do. And I feel bad for dude, but I've got my own real problems. It is what it is, Andrew. You're just going to have to deal with it. Until Andrew Ender freaking Wiggin asks the lead bully boy why he needs so many goons to take him out. And so when the others drop him, he kicks the crap out of the leader's breastbone. I just got to say breastbone, right? That's what happened. So he hits him so hard that everybody thinks he's dead. Now, even back then, it surprised me he dropped the dude so fast, but I wasn't cheering. I wasn't even really impressed. I wasn't, that violent type of kid. But what he did next stuck with me forever. All right, because in the next moments where everyone's shocked and paused, Ender's deciding he's going to kick this unconscious kid in the ribs and then calmly walks around and blasts him in his gonads, okay? Again, for all y'all sensitive people, it's not about the violence. I need you to stick with me here for a second, all right? This is what he says to everybody too shocked to move. You might be having ideas of ganging up on me. You could probably beat me up pretty bad. But just remember what I do to people who try to hurt me. From then on, you'd be wondering when I get to you and how bad it would be. And then he kicks the kid in the face. Again, sensitive people, stay with me. It wouldn't be this bad, he says. It would be worse. And then he walks out. Okay, now, hear me out. I am not condoning violence, but I devoured that book. Not because of what he did, but why he did it. And they even go into it in the next chapter. They ask him why. So why he did it, his thoughts while the bullies had the upper hand got me. Because he didn't want to fight. He wasn't scared of getting beat up, but he didn't want to fight. And he knew that after they beat him up that day, they'd keep coming back. And he'd be forced to fight every single day forever. So he thought. So he decided to win all the future fights right then and there, period. And that thread continued throughout the book. It wasn't always about violence, but the feeling of no way out but through continued, feeling reluctantly resigned to his destiny. Sometimes you just have to fight to win and free yourself. And that struck a chord with little me, not the violence. I wasn't into that by itself. I didn't jive with the killer instinct, but his reasoning in the face of his circumstances, his fearlessness, his resignedness. Now listen, to this day, every single piece of content I consume, I realize this as I wrote this, every single piece of content I consume and enjoy as a grown man, creeping really hard on 40 years old, this concept flows underneath everything. And if you go back and you look at those covers, Which one of those makes you feel like the reluctantly resigned hero, right? You look at the first one, and there's nothing. It's just empty black space. I'm not feeling anything. And then if you look at the last one, yeah, you've got the young kid. He's thin, but he's got his battle suit on. His shoulders are hunched. He's ready to fight. And then you've got the next kid, arms wide open. He's not scared, but he's not in fighting stance. And his face looks, again, not fearful, but not like he's ready to do whatever it is that's facing him or he's facing. I would pick up that middle cover. That is what I need you guys to understand. That readers don't know what they're looking for, but they do. They, people, have a core emotional thread that resonates with them, and it has for a long time. Maybe even a couple of threads. We're complex, but not many. They just don't have the ability to articulate it, not even to themselves. The closest they can get are plot themes because they haven't even thought about it in these terms. So they show up ready to buy, right? They show up at the bookstore ready to buy or online ready to buy, and then they leave because nothing spoke to them, right? Don't they say that? I mean, dude, I don't know. I wasn't really feeling anything today. That's not coincidence. Imagine if you could harness that, understand what they want better than they do. And no, the success rate won't suddenly be 100%, but most of you are batting close to zero or zero itself. Imagine getting it right 5 out of 10 times. How would that change the game for you? Guys, readers are drawn to something deeper than genres or subgenres or sub-subgenres, deeper than themes even. At the core, every story has an emotion or emotions that glues the theme and the plot and the settings and the characters together, and we don't let that go. Basically, I'm saying if you think marketing your book as your story or a genre is the safe bet, you're wrong. Every delivery vehicle your marketing has needs to weave through those core emotions because that's the true genre. They, the shopper, classifies your book around, whether they realize it or not. That's the message your shopping audience is searching for. And if your book cover can crack that nut, they'll pick it up. And if your summary is infused with it, they'll keep it in hand as they continue to browse for a little bit longer. Because that's just what we do, right? I don't understand it. Why don't you just go buy it? But anyway, that's what we do. And when they open up the first page and see you can write competently, they'll head to the cash register. Every single purchasing decision is emotional. We use facts and logic to back it up later, but every single one of them is emotional, whether we realize it or not. Why? Because everything we buy is an expression of who we are. Even a broom expresses our love, care, and pride for the homes we have. If it didn't, what's the point in cleaning up? You wouldn't care. And isn't caring an emotion? Let's wrap it up. All right, so the good news is you don't have to have an audience already to get the cover and the rest of your marketing right. It would be nice. It'd be a little bit of a lot easier, sure. But you wrote a book, you know how to grind. So I want you to dig into your story without the blinders of being its author. Search for its core emotion, the core truth. And if you get beta readers, don't just look for them to tell you whether they like it or what they liked. Who gives a shit? I'm going to go broke with this stupid swear jar. They probably aren't your audience anyway. Unless they go stark raving mad for it, that input is useless beyond a technical writing level. It won't help you sell. Shoppers haven't read it yet. Instead, ask these beta readers what the core truth was. What emotion did they feel? What emotion would they describe it as? Collect that data instead. And when you have enough, their data and yours, start infusing those findings into your marketing touch points, your summaries and 30-second speech for conferences and being stuck in an elevator, those social media posts and author or book websites, and most importantly, your cover visuals. Because if you know that truth, you can communicate it to a professional or know exactly what you're looking for when you go searching pre-made covers instead of settling for what pleases you and your pride. Remember, it's not about pleasing you. The cover's not your art. It's your tool, and it needs to function. Hammers and wrenches, they don't need to be beautiful to the wielder. They need to work, because tools that work lead to beautiful creations. So build your bridges and lead your audience in waiting to the beautiful artwork that is your story. Make sense? Good. Next video, we're talking summaries. Later, guys.